Okay, folks, we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm Amy Brand. Welcome to the Stewart Restoration Advisory Board meeting. This is meeting number 21. So thanks for coming out, everybody. I really appreciate it. We are having some sound technical issues tonight that's going to affect the way things work here in the room so that our friends online are able to hear us. And I'm really sorry. I don't know why this is happening. Our folks have been working on it for quite a while. The bottom line is that if you're standing near this laptop or that laptop, people online can hear you. The microphones in front of you are not going to work right now for people online to be able to hear you. I am very sorry. So we're going to have to ask when RAB members get into questions, if it's a short question and I can just repeat it for the folks online, I will do that. If you have a longer question, that's fine, but I'm going to have to ask you to come nearer to the computer so that people online can hear. Folks online, I need you to type into chat anytime that you cannot hear, because I have two people who will be keeping an eye on that to let us know. We do have two presenters online, and we have tested that you will be able to hear them here in the room and online. Hopefully that's good. I was going to say any questions, except that then you would have to come up here to ask them. So I apologize. This is not the plan for tonight, but hopefully we can make it all work and everybody will be able to hear fine. So we're going to go ahead. Who's presenting? Oh, sorry.
And our Spanish translator is in the back if anybody needs that.
Okay, we do have a Spanish translator here in the room. If there's anyone who would like to utilize her services, she is here in the room.
You can wave your hand. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to move ahead and go through our agenda. That was the beginning of our introduction, and I am going to go through the online meeting logistics again because we're using MS Teams rather than WebEx this time. The sound issue is not a Teams issue. It's an equipment issue, apparently. Then we'll have the co-chair welcome. And you may recall back last summer, we decided we'd have an opportunity at the beginning of the meeting for anyone that's from the public. If you came here with any questions or comments, we have a few minutes at the beginning of the meeting and also time at the end of the meeting to come forward with your questions and comments. And I'll have to ask you to come to this laptop or that laptop. Then we'll have our update on environmental projects. Again, the way we run the meeting is at the end of each presentation, there's an opportunity for RAB member questions. People from the public will hold their questions until the end. We'll have public questions and then RAB business and adjourn. Next slide, please. So go ahead. So just in general meeting guidelines, please introduce yourself. That helps a lot. We do have a court reporter who who's taking meeting transcription. Helps her a whole lot if you say your name before you speak. Again, as I already mentioned, RAB members have an opportunity to ask their questions at the end of each presentation. People from the public could hold your questions to the end, and folks online from the public type your questions into chat. And again, at the very beginning, participants from the public will have an opportunity to ask their questions at the beginning or end of the meeting. Okay, so a little bit about using MS Teams for those of you on the computer. This is not so much for you all in the room. We ask that people keep their cameras off just to help save bandwidth. You should be able to see the presentation on the screen. You can click on participants to see who else is online. RAB members, and I have seen Jen Benson online as a RAB member. I don't believe I see any other RAB members online right now unless you've joined. So Jen Benson is online. So Jen, if you have a question, you can raise your hand to be called on to speak and then unmute yourself. Public participants, again, please use the chat to type in your question and we will get to those at the end of the meeting. If you're using MS Teams from the phone and not the computer, hopefully you have a copy of the emailed slide presentation. It is also posted on the Stewart Base website. So if you don't have it, you'll want to pick up a copy of that. You can use your phone mute button when you're not speaking and dial *5 to raise your hand to be called on to speak. There is no way from anybody from the public to type in their question if they're on the phone. So If you're from the public and you're on the phone, we just ask you to wait until the public presenting type time of the meeting. Okay, so introductions. I'm not going to go through all of these other than to say that Ramona Monteverde is a new representative from the city of Newburgh, and she is here tonight. So welcome, Ramona. So thanks very much. And we'll just keep moving on. I'm not going to name everybody, I don't think. And it's the same cast of characters from the National Guard Bureau, the base, the Army Corps of Engineers, New York State. I know Justin Starr could not be here tonight. I think we have a representative from DEP. DC, I'm sorry. Okay. Ryan Richard. Ryan Richard is here from the New York State DEC. And contractors, Doug Close, Walter Howard, and Amy Brand. You're also going to hear from a couple other contractors online tonight. So that's Craig Johnson from EA and Emma Kosub from Dawson, and they're making presentations tonight. And with that, I will turn it over to Lieutenant Colonel McGuire and Mr. Ed Lawson. Again, come up to the laptop. Sorry.
Do you think they can hear me if I just...
Give it a try.
All right. Can folks hear me online?
Yes.
All right. So good afternoon. Thanks, everybody. Thank you to the board. It's cold, windy, rainy. I know I'm tired. You're probably tired, yet you're here. Trying to improve the situation, trying to make things better for the community. And I just wanted to start off by acknowledging that. So thank you. I was, for those of you who don't know, I'm a lifelong resident of the area, to include time as a resident of New Windsor and Newburgh. With the exception of a few deployments and a few Pentagon tours, I've been here for 45 years. So I want to see a resolution to this issue too. I just came from DC, literally walked into the base 3 hours ago, talking with our A4 shop, which is the shop that Bill works for, the leadership there. We were briefing our installation development plan, which is our plan for infrastructure development over the next 20-ish years. And I counted roughly a third of those projects that we pitched to National Guard Bureau as projects that surround this issue to make our base more environmentally friendly, make our water better. So in terms of what Stewart can do, what the 105th can do, we are putting time and energy behind this, and we appreciate the opportunity to be on the board and be here tonight.
Okay, and Ed Lawson is moving to the laptop. Go ahead, Ed.
Yeah, echo the Colonel's sentiment and thanks for folks to come out and to come to the session, whether it's in person or online. I'm not going to be long because I really want to get to the meeting. I am encouraged by the conversations that we're having offline with the other members of the RAB and the Air Force Base. It helps with understanding that when we see stuff and it's presented, it's hopefully we can get to direct and more expansive responses to the questions that we have. And I want to encourage people online and in the room to raise the issues of that are of concern to them. I think TAP for me is really important. Community information plan is important, and the state Route 17 remediation and addressing that is very important. And so I would hope as the presentations are executed today that those things will be kept in mind, and the questions that we've shared can be addressed in those questions. And so, and I want to continue dialogue outside of these meetings. They're few and far between. They're every 3 months. I was just talking to Supervisor Vendetti. I said, we need to know more about what's going on. There's a lot of stuff that's impacting this conversation, not just in this room and not just what's going on at the base. And so we want to be able to engage more and have more insight so that we can share more with the community. I want to talk to Ramona as well about how we can get that information out to the community, whether it's linking to other websites and linking information and posting information with a lot of the interested community members. So again, thank you for your time. Please stay engaged. please reach out to us and ask questions. And if you can be present and if you can attend these sessions online, please continue to do that. So thank you all.
Thanks, Mr. Lawson. I just want to go ahead, actually, for the sake of people who are a number here from the public as well. But just going around the room, we have Stephen Bedetti, Ed Lawson, Steve Gagnon, Jennifer Rollison, Ramona Monteverde, Chuck Thomas, Bill Fetter, Dan Shapley, Jay Beaumont, Jack Caldwell. Did I miss anyone? So we have a lot of RAB members here tonight. So I really do echo Colonel McGuire's sentiments and thank you for coming out in the cold and the wind. Appreciate it. At this point, there's an opportunity for anyone from the public who came with any questions or comments that they would like to say. Step up to a laptop. Okay. And anybody in chat, just check real quick if there's anybody. Okay, so we'll move on to environmental projects with Bill Meyer. It is not. So the question for those online, the question from Jennifer Rollison was whether this would affect the recording, and the answer is no, as long as those of you online can hear what's happening in the room. And so therefore, it's really important, if you cannot hear us online, please put that into chat. We have 2 people watching that to let us know if you can't hear something. Thanks.
All right. Good evening, everyone. I'm Bill Meyer. I'm the Restoration Program Manager for Stewart. And tonight, I'm going to kind of give you an update on some of these outside projects. So just page down. Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Next slide, please. You there? Okay. So New York State Department of Transportation, the 17K project. Today we had a meeting with DOT and the Port Authority and the contractor that was doing the design work gave some of the internal NGB A4 programmers some information on some of the recommendations that were being made. There was like about, I think we talked about, they looked at over 6 different courses of action, but there was 4 specifically that we talked about today. And we basically wanted to get some more details about it to ask what it all entailed and how they, came up with those approaches. So the result of that, we've got a follow-on meeting next week internally with the National Guard Bureau leadership to talk about, what the recommendation should be for the 17K course of action. We also have a subsequent meeting probably next week as well with DOT because there's a 50-50 cost share with this, with the cooperative agreement that we've entered in. We're going to talk about what that means and, dollar wise, because they're also NGB's paying part of this and DOT's paying part of it. So they need to be part of the decision on, the alternative that we select. We've got an idea of what we want to select, but we want to have that internal discussion. So a couple of these meetings we have to do. And then once we make a recommendation on the NGB side of the house, we'll have to staff that recommendation up through the A4 chain of command, for approval and programming and that. So took a little bit of time to get there from the last time that we had met. We were hoping to meet in December, but that didn't happen. So we just had the meeting. So that's where we're at with the 17K project. Moving on to the next one, the Stewart Air National Guard critical process analysis. Do you want me to stop or?
Go ahead. Chuck Thomas has a question. We'll go ahead. Chuck, lean.
Okay, thank you. I know we have reported.
Yeah, you're good.
We've reported last month.
And again in November that you had received, I think, 5 options from the DOT. And at that time I asked for those options. Part of an advisory board to you, I did not hear those options.
That's because we haven't released them.
Right, that is my question. I think as an advisory board, we should have some input into those options because, quite frankly, our goal is to restore not just base, but Washington Lake. And if we eliminate that source of up to 40% or 39% of the water that sometimes is coming into Washington Lake from the RAB 17K diversion, we're cutting ourselves off at the knees. So I think we should have some input. We should know what the options are. And we should have some input back into what it's what's going to happen. No matter whether it's DOT or whether it's DOD, it's still taxpayer funds. And I think as a restoration advisory board, we should hear what those options are.
Yep, we good?
Wait. Thanks, Jack.
All right. Yes, and you know, DOT, when they're ready to do the share that, we haven't even picked a solution yet. So once we pick it, they're gonna do a public involve. That's not me, it's not Bill Meyer leading the 17K project. It's the DOT that's the lead on it.
So Bill, but Chuck is asking before I say you, but before DOT chooses a solution, it's not you and it's not the air guard. It's DOT, but he's asking to see the options before that. Is that something that has to go to the DOT?
Yes, yeah. The
So
DOT,
that's a DOT decision. It's not a Department of Defense or Air National Guard decision. Heather Pillsworth, her contact information is on the screen.
Sorry.
Yeah, and I believe I saw her online as well, and so she is hearing that request. I believe it's not a Department of Defense decision. It's a Department of Transportation process. Go ahead, Mr. Lawson.
Clarity. So they've presented a couple of options to you, so you know what those options are. And I think what Mr. Thomas is asking is, can we know what those options are?
Yeah, and I have to go through DOT before I,
Tell us what the
Yeah.
options are?
yes.
It's a DOT is a completely separate organization, state versus federal. We don't have any authority over what
I
DOT.
understand that, but
Yeah.
DOT has shared with you 5 options.
Yep.
And you can't share those 5 options with us.
I think,
Is there some non-disclosure sign or something?
I don't understand why you can't just say, these are the options that they're talking about. This is what they said, we're gonna run it up the river and down the bank. We're gonna go around the corner and to the, I don't understand why we can't share the not that we can even say anything, but should we be able to say, oh, we like options 2 and 5 or 3 and 4 to you as you're having conversations with them. I don't understand why you can't even share the options with us.
okay.
Well, I mean,
No, it's not a secret, but I'm not DOT's contractor is leading the effort.
Because we have to.
No, the DOT.
Please, I'm so sorry about the sound issues, and I can tell you folks, we're working on it from 3 p.m.
Steve Bedetti
Go
here.
ahead.
Did DOT actually come to you and ask you for your input on the options?
They presented the options to us, and between the two of us, because we're the cost payers, we're trying to come up with what's the best solution.
And wouldn't it be best to have a whole bunch of minds involved in your decision to report back to them?
I think once we get ready to select what that is, then we present to it.
So you're gonna present the end option, so we're not gonna have any.
No.
So you'll present all 5 at some point?
Yes, I think they would.
Okay, and then we come back with an answer.
Yep.
I hope.
If
Okay,
I-
that's the answer.
Thank you.
If I could recommend perhaps that we follow that you have Heather Pillsworth's contact information, and she does, I believe, sit in on these meetings. I'm not looking at the list now. Bill, can you also take it from the perspective of the Air National Guard that the RAB would really like to hear the options?
And
So you all can contact her. You can take it, Bill, to them
Mhm.
and ask that those options be presented.
It seems like Heather is on the line. It says Heather's Pillsbury. She's on the line, but she's muted. Can I ask Heather directly
Just
For
did.
the five options.
Heather, if you're willing to unmute yourself to respond, that would be appreciated.
Okay, can you hear me? I am unmuted. Can you hear me?
Oh, she said, can you hear me?
I can.
You can hear me. Okay, thank
Okay,
you.
hold on. Hold on one moment, Heather. So what needs to happen to hear her in the room?
I think I need to mute so there's
No echo.
All right, Heather, you have the floor.
Okay, so there are multiple options and we are working with.
Heather, hold on. We can't
One
hear you.
moment, please. I'm sorry.
Okay,
The microphone
no
needs to
problem.
turn on.
Okay, Heather, let's try again.
Okay.
Can you hear me now? Can the folks in the room hear me?
Room, speak.
Kind of, sort of.
Okay. All right. So I was not able to attend the meeting today with DOD as well as our legal team and our contractor. So I apologize. It was not a call that I was able to attend just due to scheduling issues. With that said, there are multiple options that will be presented. It will be presented also to the public. But keep in mind, all of these options need to be vetted both through DOD, their upper echelon of command, as well as DOT. We are not ready to present them to the public yet because some of these options are not vetted as far as feasibility and affordability. So there are some things that need to be figured out before it actually comes to the RAB as well as the public, which it will go to both. Does that help there? I know that there's a lot of questions and so forth, but before it comes to the RAB and before it comes to the public, there are some more procedures to go through.
And sorry.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
2 points of clarification. What I'm hearing is that the public will see more than one option. Maybe not all the alternatives that are being considered right now, but after they go through vetting within DOT and DOD, there will be more than one option that the public hears about, is one thing I heard you ask. And then Ed Lawson asked if there is a time frame when those are going to be coming to the public.
Okay, I am unaware of the time frame at this time. As I said, I was not in that meeting, but it is my understanding that multiple alternatives will be presented, and we will do our best for both the public, the RAB, DOD interests, and the other entities that are involved.
Thank you, Heather. For those people in the room, did you all able to hear that answer? Yep. Okay. Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
You're welcome. And feel free to anyone can contact my information and I can work on getting further details. But like I said, we're just not ready to, present yet because they need to go through further procedural needs.
So just on the timeline question, you were in the meeting. Bill.
What's your name?
Dan Shapley, RAB member, Riverkeeper staff. Was there a discussion of the timeline in the meeting that you can share with us?
Just the two meetings that I told you about is what I know for timeline right now, but the follow on past that, no. But I think if we have these two meetings, we can talk about the timeline next week.
Yeah. Okay. So Mr. Lawson, for those of you online, Mr. Lawson just said for clarity, he heard Heather say, please contact her for more information. And he confirmed that you will be hearing from him and perhaps other RAB members, especially as we move forward and you may have more of an idea of what the timeline is, I think.
No problem. That is what I do.
Dan's coming up to speak to you again.
Sorry, just one other thing on this is Dan, RAB member. The state budget is being made now. The decisions are going to be made. That includes DOT's budget. And so one timing concern is that, are we going to have to delay a whole year if we don't have these decisions made in time for that budget to be made? You have your own budget programming. Can you speak to that, like likely timing given those budgeting concerns?
That is not something I have information on, but certainly reach out to me and I can elevate that to the folks who attended that meeting and who might have that information.
Okay.
Thanks, Heather. I imagine you're
You're
going to be
welcome.
receiving some email, and Ed Lawson is making his way to the laptop now.
No problem.
For your information and being as transparent. My thing is, I'm losing breath. So that's a little exercise. So thank you, Amy, for I'm getting my steps. I'm getting my steps in. The reason why, just so we're clear, and what the public is trying to do, we're getting requests to try to help ourselves. So there's a lot of grants out there. There's a lot of other funding opportunities out there. We're sitting, 2 members of municipalities are here. There's lawsuits pending. There's the ability for us to be able to do certain things. So we want to be involved so that we can help. So this remediation that you guys are doing, that the DOD is funding, is one aspect of it. There's also other funding, and if we collaborate, just like other folks do in other funding situations, we can create a better result, I think, for the community. So that's why we're asking. We're asking to see, well, if that solution is not going to work, but there's another way that we can pay for it, then we can maybe suggest, oh, well, we can collaborate on this funding together because a not-for-profit is eligible for something that maybe the government isn't. You get my point? So that's why this is coming up. It's not, we're not trying to give anybody a rough time, but information is power. And the more we have, the better we can make informed decisions.
That is absolutely understood. And we will do our absolute
He's the
best for
good
you.
cop, I'm the bad
as we-
cop. So I won't accept any decision or any condition that precludes that water getting back to Washington Lake, period.
That is exactly what we're working on. So as soon as we have more information, we will absolutely share it. I know that these upcoming meetings should shed a lot of information.
City
and-
water supply has
Sure.
been destroyed.
Sure, understood.
That's the bottom
and
line. This is
we're
all in
here-
context. We're listening to, where the ditches are going to go and this and that and everything, but we're not going back to the bottom line. The bottom line is we had a viable and reliable water source that's been destroyed. And it's time now that we're going to bring that back into context. I want that to be the end game, not just fixing Wreck Pond. The end game is fixing Washington Lake. If that amount of water is not going to be available in some form to get back to Washington Lake, I personally will object to it. That's all I can say.
Thank you, everybody. And Heather, I appreciate your chiming in on this as well. Bill, let's go forward with critical process analysis, which is also related to remediation.
Yes. No.
Go back.
this-
Go
I'm
back.
on-
It's the
I'm-
same. It's the same update slide. Yep. Go ahead. That was the first bullet on this slide.
So the Stewart Air National Guard, we did the critical process analysis through AFCAC. We already completed phase 1, which was basically, we had a third-party contractor that worked for the technical group out of the AFCAC, which is the Air Force Center or Civil Engineering Command. They basically, they got a final product that recommended 2 interim removal actions on that. There's a phase 2 of that, which is getting finalized right now. So what I'm waiting for on the phase 2 report is a cover letter that needs to be signed. It's basically going to be signed by the same gentleman that signed the phase 1 report. I can't remember his name offhand, but we're basically, that cover letter is what's going to basically finalize that report. So we're waiting on that to happen. So once that gets done, well, I'm going to go beyond the critical process analysis. So CPA phase 1 and phase 2 are part of it. I know another question, I'm just going to come out with it right now, was the non-time critical removal action, the engineering evaluation cost analysis, the NTIC, we call it NTIC or ECA. I have a draft of that we're going to submit in February to the regulators and to the RAB. So I'm reviewing that, and the Corps of Engineers and folks were all reviewing that document, which evaluates, those 2 interim removal actions. And it goes kind of through that process. Once we do that, there's also going to be a 30-day public comment period for the NTICRA ECA. So CPA, critical process analysis phase 1, was the initial look at the data and data gaps and potential interim removal actions that we could do. Phase 2 was kind of more of the details, what the scope of work might look like, and how we would execute those types of things. Combination of those things with the ECA, that's where we're at in the process. So they're all kind of interrelated. So hopefully so once phase 2 is done, I know that the Army Corps of Engineers is going to use that because there's a performance work statement structure. Basically, it spells out how we're going to do that, some of the work elements that would be something that we would need to do that. And then the Corps, New York and Baltimore Corps, are going to work on it, and they're going to basically refine that scope of work and then, get it out, for contracting. Another part of that, and I'm going to talk about it right now because it'll come up again, is the funding. I put in and programmed the funding for this year. Right now, it's at the AFCAC level for review to be approved or not approved. I don't know how they're going to go. I'm assuming they're going to approve it, but it's at the AFCAC level for approval. So I've taken it all the way through, programmed it as a FY25 requirement for this year. And I'm waiting on the approval of the funding. So Army Corps of Engineers can actually go out and do the acquisition and the contracting for it. So I've basically done everything physically possible to get it ready to go, minus completing the ECA. And I think after the ECA is done, if that's all approved, then we do an action memorandum that basically documents the decision. Here's what we're doing. We're doing stormwater repair on, 3 outfalls, and we're doing it this way. And we're doing, the hydraulic control of groundwater for the interim groundwater action this way. So those are the major working parts. I've been trying to keep this thing moving along. We talked about it in the spring, and so far I've been hitting the wickets, but I can only go as fast, as I can. So with that was a little bit more than critical process analysis, but they all tied together. So I figured I would talk about it right now.
Okay. And the fingerprinting study?
Fingerprinting. All right. I got to pull the email up, which is here. So fingerprinting, we completed the UFP QAP in September. This fall, they were out doing the field work. All the field work that they said that they were going to do in that UFP QAP was completed. Right now, we're waiting for the 1633. It's the laboratory analysis for for all the samples and that they collected. They're waiting for the validation and all the lab work to be done. They're looking at February 25, having all that data validated and completed. Also, the fingerprinting and the background study, screening and statistical analysis, they're on target to complete that June, early July of this year. And then there'll be a preliminary draft report out to the Corps of Engineers, AFCAC, Air National Guard in September of 25. So that's kind of where we're at in that process. And that's all I have for the fingerprinting and background study update.
Bill, I'm going to ask you even before the RAB members ask you, is there a time that RAB members will be able to see that draft report?
Oh, yeah. So once we look at the draft report and comment on it, just like the draft ECA, we're looking at it internally, then we'll send it. The regulators are going to get it and the RAB's going to get it. Same deal. Just like the due diligence report that you're going to hear about tonight. We sent that out in December to y'all. DOD safe. Same thing, same process. So when it's draft final, when we get it to draft final, that's basically after the contractor has all of our comments and input. then they send it out to the regulators and that, and the RAB. So. Anything else?
The phase 2 of the CPA, that'll be shared.
Yes.
At the same time.
The question online is whether the phase 2 of the CPA critical path analysis would be shared through the same channels, and the answer is
Yes.
was yes. That was Dan Shapley.
Yep.
Other questions? Okay. I appreciate you all being willing to get in your steps to come up here to speak. We'll move on then, and we have a presentation from Craig Johnson from EA on PFAS sources other than AFFF, and this is at multiple Air National Guard installations. Craig, let's go ahead and make sure that we can hear you before you launch in.
Yeah, this is Craig Johnson with EA. Can you hear me okay? Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, so can the room hear me okay? I heard a yes, but I don't know who that was from.
Yep, sounds great.
Okay, we're good to go?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Sorry for the delay there. Yeah, as mentioned, I'm Craig Johnson with EA Science, Engineering, and Technology. We just go by EA. And as Bill had mentioned, we are working on a due diligence report which is synonymous with a preliminary assessment, but it's a due diligence report for PFAS sources other than AFFF. Many of the installations we're working at had the AFFF PAs already done, and we were contracted to do the due diligence at 140 of the ANG installations, and Stewart is the furthest along. That was our first priority for that. So that's where we're at. Is we're doing these at each of the installations, and we'll go through kind of what the process is for that due diligence. Next slide, please. I'd mentioned I work for EA Engineering, Science and Technology. We go by EA, and we are contracted by the Army Corps, specifically the Omaha District, and they are supporting the Air National Guard at all the installations. So we work with all the environmental managers at each of the Air National Guards, as well as Stewart, and the top level team with Keith and his team as well. So that's who's all working on this due diligence at the ANG, again, for the non-AFFF PFAS. Next slide, please. Objectives are pretty straightforward, as you would imagine, for due diligence or preliminary assessments, and to determine, based on historical activities, whether potential sources other than AFFF PFAS were stored, handled, or released, and if there was a release or potential for release or not, if it needs further investigation, or if no further investigation is warranted. And typically at the end of our due diligence report, we will recommend for further evaluation, which would likely result in kicking that into a site inspection. But as far as what happens after this preliminary assessment / due diligence, that'll be on a kind of a base by base determination. Next slide, please. As I mentioned, our task has a couple different layers of trying to get data. One is to do a historical records review, looking at things like the environmental baseline surveys, looked at obviously the admin record, interviewed people who might have some history with the operations at the building, and to determine if there is those activities based on the information we have might have a potential release of PFAS. And then we are preparing the research reports. Again, we're calling these due diligence. They're very synonymous with preliminary assessments. And while that says completion of 2026 February, that's for the whole program. As Bill had mentioned, that draft final document was submitted. The draft was submitted internally to the government folks. They made their comments. We revised that, and then that was sent out to the regulators. And it's my understanding it made it to the RAB team as well. Next slide, please. So our research, just a quick little summary of that, included the footprint of the Stewart Air National Guard. It included over 87 shops, locations within that footprint, building by building. We evaluated the entire admin record with searches and so forth 15 of those documents were the primary documents, although we may have gathered a little bit of information from many other documents as well. We did interview Michael as part of as the environmental manager to get as much information as we could to fill any data gaps that we had during our research. Next slide, please. Again, our research is going to focus in interviews. We're trying to find as much information as we can about each of the shops and processes, and trying to determine if those processes, based on the information we have, might identify potential PFAS releases, any discharge points, or any disposition of material. Next slide, please. This slide here is fairly standard. It has 3 columns there, and it rolls onto 2 pages, but we'll go through the first page here, and I won't go through all this, but the first column there tells us the types of buildings and shops that might have processes and ultimately product types that would introduce PFAS. And so as you kind of go through those: automotive hobby, motor pool, electroplating, mess hall, those kind of things, you move over to the next column that identifies the processes that might use chemicals that would have PFAS constituents, and then specifically, what are those chemicals, a defoamer, it could be mist suppressants and those kind of things that we would be looking at. So we would consider the building shop, the process that was done there, and the potential product types. And again, that was primarily gathered through the admin record, the environmental baselines studies that have been done, any other subsequent reports. And again, our focus was the non-AFFF. So we understand, obviously, the AFFF has been addressed previously. And then the next page, if you could, is just a continuation of that table there. And you can see where we gathered that this table from was the OSD gains of 2022, and as well as the 2023 update there. And these just give you an idea of the things that we looked at. If there's anything that's not on this list that we might suspect would be a PFAS source, then we would certainly add that to that. But for the most part, with the data we have, we focused on the buildings and shops listed in column 1 there. And then if there was some process that maybe there's a corner of a building that did one of these processes, we would consider that as well. Next thing. So really what we've done, we've gone through that, we've drafted that report, we've sent that in for review, and I think you have that. If anybody today or if you're aware of anybody that might have additional information of activities at Stewart, Bill's information, I mean, obviously he's there in the room, but we've provided that on the next slide, and you can reach out to him and or myself, and we can certainly complete an interview of the type of activities that you might be familiar with. And we've done that quite a bit. So if anybody has any information, we'd like to hear more on that. And I think, yeah, that's it. That's it there. So are we taking questions now or later, Amy?
We're opening that up to RAB questions. Again, questions from RAB members. We've had a new RAB member join the room. Mike, what you don't know is we're having sound issues. So if you would like to ask a question, you have to go stand near one of these laptops. And so RAB questions, please again, introduce yourself. And also, if we have any RAB members online, you may also get to
I guess I'm up. That go take
Yeah,
care of. Okay,
yeah.
great. So one question just on the slide, Dan Shapley, Riverkeeper, RAB member. On one of the slides, it makes a reference to a base closure in 1991 and some information gaps. Could you explain that? As far as I know, I might not have the dates exact, but the Air Force used the property up until 1970 roughly, and the Air National Guard was established in like 84, I think. So what's the gap, and what's the significance of 1991? And then if I could just throw out other questions while I'm here, so I don't have to get back up. The report identified 10 areas that, quote, requiring further investigation. So what will happen to investigate them? And then there were 20 areas that were identified where PFAS might have been used, but there wasn't a record of a release. Is there going to be some kind of verification, of sampling to show that there wasn't a release to kind of verify that? And then specifically within that, I think there's the landfill identified as IRP number 3 that looked like a hot spot, but was sort of not included among the places to be investigated. So if you could explain those.
Yep.
Thanks.
Yeah, Bill, you may know more a little bit on the actual dates of things, but as far as the evaluation of things, it is, again, I don't know if I've remembered all the things that you'd mentioned there, but we did have, we went through the buildings, obviously, and if we had a known release, then of a suspected PFAS compound, then that would move it forward. If we had, if it was a particular building that had a process and it was, under normal activities, it would have been kind of a low likelihood of a release, and we don't have any record of that. We didn't necessarily move that forward unless we had somebody had an issue with that. We did have a comment from this during the state review to ask us to, they have recognized that we may not have that information, but if we did come up with something subsequent to the issuance of this document, that we would revisit that as well. So that's how that report will be revised. As far as the landfill's concerned, we've the ones that are moving forward, to answer your question, would more than likely go to an SI. Again, I don't want to speak to we're not involved in the next step, but Bill, you might have an idea of if it's going to be in an SI or if it would move immediately to an RI. That's typically what we would do. Those that we didn't have a release and had a low likelihood based on their normal activities, maybe they were using very small volumes of a wax, and it was contained, then maybe that wouldn't move forward. But we tried to really go through, again, a lot of that was of the activities, and we took a fairly conservative approach moving things forward, in a sense of we moved things forward. If we thought there'd be some potential for release, that we'd go ahead and recommend that for further investigation. Again, that'd probably be an SI. Could be a little bit more than that, but that's kind of how things were developed for that report. We did run that through the government and their folks, as well as obviously send it to the state to verify, did we miss something? The state did point out some information that we didn't have as part of their investigation. I don't have those comments here in front of me, but so we will incorporate the data based on that comment as well. So that might change some of the evaluations based on the comments we got. I think I got those maybe last week, and so we have not completely addressed those state comments yet, nor have we finalized that document.
Hey, Craig, this is Bill Meyer. So
Yeah.
Did you address the BRAC closure, the 1991?
No, I did not. Yeah.
Could you explain what a BRAC is first?
Base realignment and closure is BRAC.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Repeat that. For inactive.
For inactive installations. So
Right.
the DOD has a process where they do base realignment and closure for when they don't need the real estate or the property for mission. They get rid of excess property, but to get rid of it, you got to do all the environmental cleanup and all that before you can transfer it or sell it off. And that's what the BRAC process is about. But then I'll let Craig talk about the date gap between when the guard started and the 1991 date that was in the report.
Yeah, so I mean, we do recognize there are some data gaps in there because we don't have, complete records. So we have to, do what we can from the admin record and the interviews and obviously some feedback from folks if they have some information based on those activities, what may or may not have been done. And we try to recognize that in the report that there may be a data gap in certain situations. If it's a low likelihood, it may not move forward. If it's a pretty standard activity that we've seen on other installations that would warrant investigation, then we would recommend that being moved forward.
Okay.
Thanks, Craig. Bill, you were going to say something?
Yeah, just one last thing to kind of.
We have a question from Steve.
Okay, to kind of put a bow on it. So the follow-on stuff, and Craig was right, there'll be like a follow-on site inspection. So you remember the site inspection and the expanded site inspection out here. The whole purpose of the site inspection was to confirm or deny. So they identified 10 areas that had potential use of PFAS in that. So though, as part of the SI, they would go out and collect a soil, groundwater sample, depending on where the release was and, how they thought that it was going to get there. And then we'd get that data. And then if it was above the standards, then we'd move it on to the RI. So CERCLA process, and this is kind of what we're following here, requires us to kind of do that yes, no confirmation piece of it. So is it going to be added to the RI right away? No. We're going to go through the CERCLA process and do the site inspection for those 10 areas. Now, the other areas where there was low probability in that, we'll make a decision on, do you include some of those just because of, the information that we gathered from the interviews and that. And then basically, I think what the Air Guard's doing and Air Force is doing, big picture wise, is we'll probably do like a nationwide site inspection contract, because Stewart's not the only place that we're doing this. So the Air Guard has 75 installations. Each installation got one of these due diligence reports where they went out and looked at other non-AFFF sources. So, okay.
Okay, we have a question from Stephen Bedetti.
Bill, how are you? Yeah, I just got a question for you. I know I'm sure. January 27th dated the response from the DC and New York State DOH in reference to that due diligence report. You saw that? Or are they, have you read it and everything? Are they all pretty much going to end up in there? Because I see there's a lot of data that was left out of here, especially for my town.
Yeah, they're gonna go through stuff. If we had some that we didn't get right, or it needs to be added, they're gonna update it.
Okay, and then obviously when that all goes back in there, we'll get that shared again.
Version of it.
Okay, good.
Thank you. Any other questions on the non-AFFF PFAS source presentation?
I have a question about the little asterisks at the bottom in regards to the emissions areas being excluded.
Could you step to the laptop, or I can repeat it? To you. I just want to make sure people online can hear your question.
Jennifer Rollison, New York Clean Water Project. I just had a question because there's notations at the bottom in regards to military munitions areas and how it's excluded. Is there any concern, or what's the point of that? Like, is there a different process that then cleared those areas? Because I'm not military, so.
Okay. Did you hear that, Craig?
Yeah. So I guess there's
yes.
kind of a program decision outside, beyond us, me, to exclude the munitions type stuff unless there was something that we knew because they were currently in a program, and that those would be evaluated, if at all, separately.
No, I got you. So you're asking, so in the report, it says those areas were excluded. That's because there's a military munitions response program that's already done in PASI for all the bases, looking for that kind of stuff. So that wasn't part of their scope of the investigation. There's a whole different program if they've used munitions and stuff in the past. So, sure.
So I just want to be clear, when you have this public ask about people contacting, he's looking for former folks who worked on the base.
Yep.
Active duty or retired, et cetera.
Yep.
Do you not feel that that's a little bit of a burden to the public to kind of fill in the gaps of information that, I understand PFAS until the last 15, 20 years was, it was referred to as biodegradable by the kernel. So there would obviously not be health monitoring and such because they didn't deem it an issue.
Okay, put me hot. Cleared hot? All right, let's go. So what they're looking at when they do that, we do this all the time. There's people out there that knows, hey, my dad used to work at the base back in, and I remember him working at the plating facility and they use PFAS all the time out there. If someone knows someone like that, we don't know everybody in the community, but if someone through a relationship or someone knows, hey, retired Colonel so-and-so did this out there, they may, anything helps us further kind of open the aperture up to try to narrow it down and do an investigation. We're not asking you to go out and ask the community, but if somebody knows somebody, please let us know. And these guys will follow up and try to get some more information. That's the only way we can really do it. Yep, sure.
First,
contact him, you should have his contact. And he worked with Stewart Airport early on.
So the first comment is that Bob Browning is a former RAB member who worked at Stewart previously, and he should be contacted.
Okay.
And I believe I have an email address for him.
Yeah, if you can get that to me, we'll certainly interview Bob.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Thank
No, I'm good with you, Craig.
Funding for the new work, is that in place or does it need to be procured?
The question is
Yeah.
whether funding for the new work is in place or needs to be procured. And I think Bill's gonna answer that.
Yes, so right now they're working, I think it's a FY 26 requirement that they're looking at. So they've got an idea of, how much it's gonna cost, but FY 26. So
Yeah.
it's not gonna happen this year. I mean, we're doing all the reports and that, and definitely, there's gonna be follow on with that. But I talked to our folks at the headquarters, or at least the Air Guard headquarters and that, and they're looking at that right now. Yep. All right. Is that it?
Okay, from my reading of the room, we're ready to move on to the next presentation. Couple slides, there we go, that was, okay. So now, Mr. Lawson.
Well,
Okay, come on up,
so
Mr. Lawson would like to make a comment.
I want to stop it, so we stop there. The Route 17, the state Route 17, I wanted to make a comment. I just wanted to echo Seth's point. He said a good cop, bad cop. I don't know what that meant, but the point so when we talk to folks in the community, they think remediation means restoring back to where it was before. And so if we used to use Lake Washington and used to fund, and as Chuck mentioned, it was a reservoir, that funded, that supplied not just the city of Newburgh, but Newburgh was able to sell that water to other communities. And so the community wants that back. And so if we're saying that we have to wait this long amount of time for remediation to happen because the water used to flow through Stewart ANGB base, wound up in that Washington Lake, and now we have water, but it's going to be diverted now. And that's going to take time for this remediation to happen for us to get our water back. And so we would like it to be on the record, and we would like to have conversations to say that if there's going to be a rerouting, we want to make sure that we get our situation straight and we get remediated back to where we were. The community didn't do anything wrong. They didn't ask for it. They actually built a vaunted water system that rivals many of across the state. So because I think the response was, that's not one of the considerations. Well, we would like for it to be one of the considerations. We would like for it to be something that is considered moving forward and not just wiped off the table. And I think we're going to be talking to him, but I want to just say, not being able to be transparent about that creates communications issues. So this whole back and forth about we can't tell you, it just creates a little bit of a concern. So just, again, we want that to be remediated. The community wants it to be remediated. We want to get that remediated as soon as possible. We understand that things take time, but if that's not even a consideration at this stage, then that's problematic. So we want to put that back on the stage.
That it's not just a want, but that they deserve it.
Yep. Concur. And, the 17K is, one part of a 3-part for these interim actions. It's not the final solution by any means. There's other things, but, keeping with the theme of the DoD policy and doing interim actions earlier, so we don't have to wait, until we get to proposed plan and record of decisions and that, for final remedies. That's why we're focusing on the interim ones right now, to try to at least get something going. So.
And because we now can speak directly to them, Representative DOT, you'll be engaging in this conversation.
Sure.
Okay. And Mr. Lawson reiterated that because they can speak directly to the representative from DOT, Heather, heads up, you'll be hearing from them. I added that part, just that's not what he said. Okay, we're gonna move on to the PFAS PFOA remedial investigation presentation. This is Ed Meyer and also Walt Howard from AECom.
Well, if you'll go over
Go
to
back.
Catherine's side, I think
You
the,
go to Kath. Go to Catherine's side.
Yep.
Evening, everyone. I'm Walter Howard. I'm with AECom. I'm project manager on the PFAS RI. So I'm here to give you an update since November. First slide here, that's our conceptual site model, and Bill's been through this before. It's, nothing's changed with it. It's, just showing the areas that we're investigating, where we're needing additional data. We do step outs. But it's basically looking at the groundwater, where we have releases and impacted groundwater in the overburden as well as in the bedrock, and then the contribution from storm drains to rec pond, et cetera. Nothing's changed. You've all seen that. Next slide, please. Here's just an update of the status where we're at, and this hasn't changed a lot since November either. Again, we're in May, we had the CLAP addendum went into the DEC as a draft. But DEC allowed us to begin mobilization 2 in May. And we worked through May, June, July, and then we had a delay with the right of entry that we're trying to work out with Stewart Airport. That was executed in September. We resumed in October and then resumed our drilling activities in early December. We're out there, we're continuing to drill and install the monitoring wells and do groundwater sampling as well as soil sampling. So we're moving along with that. It's been a challenging winter. It's been a real winter here in the Northeast for a change. So we can go on. I have all the figures that have been updated since November. Next slide, please. That's just, you can just go on. So this first figure, this is, again, it just shows all of our proposed and completed mobilization 2 locations. The green dots are those who've been completed. The purple not yet been completed. Most of those are on the perimeter or surface water and sediment. Bottom right, we have a table of what, all the locations for soil. We have 142 locations we've completed. Shows we've completed 100. We're a little bit over that now with the groundwater. This is a little bit older. We're up to about 29 overburden wells installed and sampled, and so on. We have not, and I'll talk about this, but this surface water sediment, as well as the storm water, has not been conducted for mobilization 2 yet. That's getting pushed off to this spring. Okay, we can go to the next slide. So this figure, this is an updated groundwater figure. Rather than showing the locations that have been completed, this is going back to showing some of the results. This figure shows the PFOS concentrations in all of our mobilization 1 and the mobilization 2 locations that have been completed to date. The round symbols there, they represent all of our mobilization 1 locations. And then the small squares, they represent our mobilization 2 locations. The purple squares, those are the locations that have not been completed yet. And then all the other symbols, they're shaded 1 of 5 colors to represent the range of PFOS that each sample result fell within. So I won't go through you've seen this color ramp in the past. I won't go back through them in detail, but they're listed there, what the different ranges are. The highest concentrations, which are represented by the the red and the burgundy colored symbols, those that we talked about are concentrated at the pretty much the southern end of the base, in the vicinity of between AOC 6 and the former firehouse, down to the retention basins and then to Rec Pond. So then in addition on this, we have the blue PFOS ISO concentration contour lines from our computer model. We've talked about this. We've seen this. We had this first presented after mobilization 1. I believe it was a year ago now. And so that's, those are contours that show equal areas of PFOS concentrations. They range, the contours range from a low of 4 parts per trillion, which is the RSL project screening level, up to over 4,000 parts per trillion. These, it's just to help, show the limits of the groundwater impact, as it's been characterized to this point. And these contours, they are, they're basically developed from the mobilization 1 data. They haven't been updated to, with the new mobilization 2 data as of yet. Most of the mobilization 2 data does, fit with the contours as they are. There's a couple of exceptions to that. If you look into it, to the east side of Rec Pond and southeast of the retention basins, there's a couple contours there that need to be modified. That'll all get updated once the rest of the mobilization 2 data is completed and into the groundwater model. I guess the only other thing to point out, I mean, it's obvious, the green polygon there to the southeast corner, that's where we've not, yet been able to get approval from property owners for our sampling plans. The east side of that is the town of New Windsor closed landfill, and they have not granted us permission to sample groundwater there. And then there's another right of entry there that we're in the process of working through, and that should be coming through before too long. So I guess that's about it. We can go on to the next figure. So this is our soil sample completion map. And this, again, it's the green locations are those that have been completed. Purple have not yet been completed. We've completed over 75% of them. A lot of these we've added on, as being completed since the November meeting. Again, we've slightly over 100 locations have been completed. At each one of these locations, we're generally completing 2 shallow soil samples. At some of the locations, we have some deeper samples, and those are mostly the ones that are still showing as purple. We need to do those with a drill rig. So, okay, I guess we can move on. Next slide, please. This is a stormwater sample location figure for mobilization 2. It's no different from November. We haven't done the sampling yet, so everything is purple. This will be completed. Sampling will be completed in, we believe, in March at this point. Yeah. So, and go on to the next slide, please. This is our surface water sample map. It's the same as you saw in November. The red triangles are the mobilization 1 locations that we're going to resample for a second event. The green triangles, those are new locations that we're going to sample for MOB 2. They're step outs from the mobilization 1 samples further downstream. And then there's a couple gold triangles there, and that's where those are new locations that we're going to do both surface water and sediment samples at. Okay, that's it. We can move on. That's the last of our figures. And then we'll go back to the updated RI schedule. And this we have not changed since the November meeting either. We're in RI mobilization 2B. Hoping to finish. This will probably get extended into the spring of 2025 at this point. So But then beyond that, for mobilization 3 and 4, we're still hoping to complete that as the schedule shows. So anyway, like that's pretty much it. Yeah, I can go to the next slide. I'm all set. So this is all the same as well. This is just just more detail of what mobilization 3 and 4 are going to include. And we talked through this all in November, what those entail. So there's no real changes there.
Okay, so I'll open it up to RAD members for hold on. Opening up to RAD members for questions, comments on Walt's presentation on the progress on the RI.
Hello, Mike Shade, RAB member. Sorry to be late. I guess you talked a little bit about the groundwater results and you said they're largely consistent, although there's some areas where the contours need to change based on the new results. Can you comment on in terms of what you're seeing in terms of the soil sampling? Particularly curious about this nozzle training area in the Northwest and other areas. Like, are there any new things you're seeing in the soil sampling that was interesting or novel that is different than, what we've seen thus far from previous rounds of sampling?
In the areas that are documented nozzle testing, and some of them we have found surface soil results that are fairly elevated. Yes.
Yeah. So nothing.
But it's been kind of to be expected. So yeah.
And you mentioned some issues with accessing property from New Windsor. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, we with the town of New Windsor to.
Hold on 1 second, Walt. Hold on 1 second. We good? Sorry, we had a little feedback there for a minute.
Because you're not muted. Oops, sorry.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
So the Army Corps has a right of entry, executed with the town of New Windsor. And we have not, been able to make arrangements to be able to actually go and sample groundwater on that property.
Oh, I think so. They've given permission, you just haven't been able to.
Yeah, well,
But they took it back.
they gave it and took it back.
Oh, interesting. What was their justification?
They revealed that to us.
Member.
Before you start, take a pause
Yeah.
between when we switch back and forth between Walter and you, and that'll help avoid that feedback issue. Go ahead, Dan.
Dan Shapley with the RAB. Keep going with the
Yeah.
question. Okay. So do we know at this point? I saw the groundwater samples near Washington Lake. Are we confident? Is there confidence at this point that groundwater is not contaminating and the lake? Is that been concluded? Like, is there anything we've concluded about that?
All of the groundwater data we have along fringe, the edge of the lake, between Route 300 and the lake has not shown any exceedances of the RSLs. And we have data that's in bedrock as well as in the overburden zone. So.
Forgive me, I might have brought this up at the last meeting and I forget the answer, but when we were on the base tour, it was described these under drains under the stormwater infrastructure that seemed to be a pathway for groundwater, potentially polluted groundwater. Can you speak to those and how they're being analyzed, if at all?
Yeah, I saw the comment of that question that was emailed to us. That's what that was. I wasn't on the base tour, but I believe you're referring to the under drains that are beneath the apron. Would that be right? Yeah. And so those are, we are not sampling those drains right there, except they do drain into outfall 2. And we're sampling outfall 2 everywhere along there, the manholes. So yes, We are sampling that water as it enters the stormwater system. Is that?
Other questions on the RI presentation? Chuck? And I did hear Chuck online. They were having a little bit hard time hearing you. So just, yeah, thank you. Go ahead, Chuck.
Back to the Washington Lake overflows. It seems like we're having a lot of water coming in. I don't know what the whole arrangement was when everybody worked together to build up the walls of Lake Washington so that it would hold more water. I don't know whether the city did that or who's was involved in all that. But my understanding was they built up the walls to hold more water. And then the DEC had been renting a filtration plant that was then removed after those walls were built up. Well, we're now seeing overflows out of Washington Lake, and we've got another 3/4 of an inch coming tomorrow. And I think we're going to overflow again and again and again. So has anybody looked at how we can address that? I mean, I think we need to have another filtration plant lowering the water levels of Lake Washington.
Go ahead, Bill.
Thank you.
All right. So that would be a question for DEC, because DEC, you can take that back. There was a question about, we took off the dewatering system that was on Lake Washington, and there was another treatment system for the dewatered piece. There's a treatment system that the city uses. Now the water just passes through and goes to the treatment. Well, actually, it just goes through to the treatment system, I think. There's something that stops it. I talked to Justin about it. There's a pass through right now. They were actively treating, or no, that's something else. That's with the aqueduct water, something separate. But they had a dewatering system. They took it out. They removed it. And the whole purpose of it was to control the water levels in Lake Washington. And DEC made a decision to take that out. So you got to come up here to tell us.
No, if that's what you have to say, I can repeat it.
Okay.
Okay. The DEC representative who is here at the meeting will relay that question back to Justin Starr, who is the DE representative who is usually here at the meeting. Any other questions or comments on the? Oh yeah, Chuck Thomas, go ahead.
It just seems to me that that's not a DEC problem. The problem is the lake water is polluted because Wreck Pond was polluted. Now Lake Washington water is polluted and that water is overflowing. So I think I wouldn't say that DEC should be paying for it. They paid for it for a couple of years. I thought that was very well of them. It's all coming out of the same taxpayer's pocket. Let's figure out who's going to pay for this and get it going. Whatever happens, this water is overflowing. You're going to be contaminating more wells. You're going to end up with a larger containment area that you have to deal with than we have right now. Right now, you can almost put your arms around the containment area. Right now is the time to stop this. We've got something that's fixable and we need to have a concerted effort to fix it, not pointing fingers to go this way or that way. Sit down with them and get it fixed.
Okay, thanks. And with that, we are going to move on to the interim stormwater treatment system presentation. Careful to the board. Doug Close will be presenting.
Hello, everyone. Nice to see you. Doug Close with Bristol Environmental Solutions. We'll be talking about the fourth quarter period of the interim stormwater treatment system at Wreck Pond. Next slide, please. Presentation, quarterly notes. This period of October through December, you'll see a slight decrease in runtime of the plant at 91%. And that was due fully in part of the dry season that we had. We had good drawdown. We were at max levels that we wanted to operate the equipment. So there was oftentimes we would idle the plant or turn it off. So not to foul or, decrease the efficiency of the media. So that's a 91% that we usually don't report on. Part of that quarterly reporting period also included the removal of the ultrasonic equipment that kills the algae. With fall coming and the low water levels, we don't need it. So we removed that equipment, stored it for the winter. After running about 20 weeks of our media with great results, we started to lose some of our treatment capability or our flow of treatment through solids loading in and fouling of the media. So we changed the media in early December, as well as part of our general operational maintenance schedule. We replaced one of the full containers. We took the equipment, the vessels out and replaced that. And we'll see that in the next slide. Right. And then just your totals for the quarter, 22 million gallons treated during that period, reaching over 630 million gallons to date. Next slide. So some photos, for those that have visited the site, the containers hold a treatment train. Each train has 3 vessels, 2 GAC and 1 resin. So here's the center picture of everything moved out. The older ones taken out and newer ones brought in, and then all that connecting equipment, piping, hardware is put all back together, and we have new vessels. So that's been going on. Here's our configuration for everybody in the room. They're quite familiar. For those on the phone, if you start on the left in the blue, that's the rec pond waters. That's where the pump takes the water in, and then you follow those arrows through the different treatment steps until you empty out with discharge in the lower part of the diagram. The green bar indicates train C. That was the container that we replaced all the equipment in. Our typical sampling results for the period. Always want to remind you of the different axes. On the left-hand side of the chart is the influent concentration of PFOS and PFOA that we're sampling for on a weekly basis. You can see it goes from 0 up to 700. So that's the influent concentration. When we're taking our samples, that 430 is about 100 parts per trillion higher than our typical average. And that is wholly due to the low water level. So we have low stormwater flow coming in, low to none during a large part of that quarter. That concentration gets a little richer of the contaminated groundwater. On the other side, the right-hand side, is our effluent. So that's after treatment. So it goes through the GAC and the resin. Excellent results during the quarter. We didn't treat as many bed volumes or gallons as a whole, so we were able to have non-detect through the whole period. For effort to just kind of chart, we've been talking and trying to answer about what is being treated and flow that doesn't get treated or bypasses our treatment system because of the high volume. So the next couple slides give you a picture of that. This is for that quarter. The light blue is the indication when we had contained the water. We were getting full treatment. The white bar, as you track across from left to right, is the precipitation events. So you can see low precipitation events, good containment. You see the spike right there at around Thanksgiving or just before. That's when flow started to really come in and lasted through the rest of December. So the darker blue is when we had water going beyond us or bypassing treatment. Let's look at the next chart. Next slide. I think, did you jump one? Yeah, so then this is the same chart that I just described, same bars, same colors. This is the year to date. So goes all the way from January of last year, where we had high water getting bypassed, a little more than half, 60% of the time. Goes all the way across the calendar until December of 24. And then again, the white chart or the white line is the precipitation events. Okay. And in closing here, our final chart, this is again, more concentration. We wanted to show, because we've had questions asked when we have less flow coming into the pond or less weather, is there more PFAS in the pond? And that's what this shows on the left-hand side. You can see our concentrations got as high as 700 parts per trillion. Over here on the right-hand side of the chart, so November through December, with more rain, that concentration begins to drop. A little bit of dilution from the stormwater inflow. I think that's it.
Questions from RAB members on the interim stormwater treatment presentation? And I am seeing some. Chuck, did I see your hand?
You did.
Okay, Jennifer?
I will.
Okay, Chuck Thomas.
Sorry, Chuck Thomas from the Conservation Advisory Council, City of Newburgh. With we're talking about the bypasses, high water flows ends up having bypasses around the filtration system. If you could just refresh us and tell us where the water that's being bypassed goes.
Well, Rec Pond was designed to receive all those storm waters and then flow over the weir into Silver Stream. So if we're not drawing down below the weir and treating it below that structure, it's flowing into Silver Stream.
So from Silver Stream, it goes to
the Hudson
River. And Demudna Creek is in between those two, yeah. But that's acceptable.
That's where it's going.
That's where it's going, which is spreading a little further. Thank you.
Okay, Jennifer Rawlson.
Hi, Jennifer Rawlson, Newburgh Water Project. So I'm going to bounce off of Chuck because I understand, we're being told the average was about 100 parts per trillion higher because of low water. And I understand, a rush of water increases the bypassing. And then you also kind of set up, because if you're doing a media exchange, how much did the media exchange impact? Because it seems to fall right in when we're having a spike in water in December. And it seems that there's a longer period to recover all of that bypass. It seems like a little bit of water comes in and it really disrupts the bypassing. And as Chuck is saying, and we've been echoing this for years, not weeks, the concern of that bypass, because once it's going over the weir, it's going into the environment. And part of this whole process is not only to protect human health, but the environment. And so we've already acknowledged this isn't necessarily a success. This is actually a failure of the system. If there's all this dark blue for such a long period of what you're measuring. So I guess, sorry, it's not questions. I don't mean to be a monologue, but so how much did the switching of the system affect everything? Like how long was it down for, if it was at all? And are you coming up with those solutions, whether it's a drawdown at the Rec Pond or changing when you're, it just seems odd because if I'm looking at December, it's half an inch of rain that fell and we're still in this huge percentage. When it was spiked, it was 1 inch. It just, we're going from November into December and it's just all dark blue showing the bypassing.
I'll try to answer your questions. The first one, now I'm already forgetting. The first one is that the treatment system was changed, or the media was changed in the treatment system, because after 20 weeks of drawing in pond water, you're fouling the media, you're loading it with pond solids, especially when we have a low drawdown. When we're 16 inches below, we're taking up sediment from the bottom. So the media exchange was scheduled because we couldn't process water above 300 gallons per minute. So that's an indicator for us to make a change. Our system capabilities is only 500 GPM. So a 1-inch rainstorm can peak at 5,000 gallons per minute coming into the pond. So it fills up rather quickly. And if you only have 500 GPM system, you're not going to capture a 5,000 gallon flow. So the size of the system is the size of the system for us right now. That's our handicap. But the media change didn't have anything to do with it. It was actually done during a period, and we had no bypass during those 6 days when we were changing the media.
So I want
I'm just going to respond to that, I think, as well. Go ahead.
So the other part of that is because of the overflow, that's what the 17K bypass is hopefully going to reduce what's going into Rec Pond. So the system can keep up with it. Because right now we can't design a system that's going to completely dewater Rec Pond. I mean, it goes dry, when there's dry spells, but when you get significant precipitation events, that's like dewatering Lake Erie. I mean, it's a large volume of water so like we talked back to the doing the interim actions, the 17K bypass coupled with the stormwater treatment, the combination of those things are going to reduce the mass that's going into Rec Pond. And then also the 17K should reduce the volume that they have to treat with the 500 GPM system. So it's a combination of all those things. Can they all happen simultaneously? We're trying to do that, but
It's been the conversation for now we're now in 2025, and it was brought up in 2020, first meeting that was here. So that's 5 years of your time where the issue was acknowledged and never dealt with. And this interim word language can only go so far. And I understand if we have a rain event, then this is the effect of it. But, you only need to blow a bomb once, right? And you only need to contaminate once. And this is just ongoing and accumulating. And once it hits that stream, it's just, it accumulates, right? I don't know how often you go back past the weir and test to see where our numbers are now with that. But the day we were on there and we're seeing how many thousands of gallons flow per minute, and this is less. All of this blue is from a rainfall less than 2.5. So at some point there has to be this is not working, and we can't wait because we're being told by you guys that the DOT is an ongoing process. And I don't think you need to wait, because the word interim really means that. Don't wait for that final solution from them. Interim, your interim, so that's my.
We'll go to Dan Shapley.
It's actually really a question for Walt based on that presentation. But you've got data that you're going to be collecting in Silver Stream and Moodna Creek. How frequently is that data collected? Because it's got to be highly variable what you're going to see in that kind of surface water in order to kind of really understand what's the impact.
Yeah, it'll only be a single event. That's what we're.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the response was that it will be a single event for collecting that data.
And then I guess the part two kind of go to Supervisor Bedetti, or maybe between, you've got wells, the Butter Hill wells, right, that are impacted by Moodna Creek water.
And the Crow wells.
And so I don't know how frequently those are tested for PFAS, the raw water there, but that would seem to be a better indicator of what the impact of that flow down the creek would be. And can we get frequent sampling of that raw water if it's not happening, or interpret the data if it is happening.
Sampling is pretty regular.
Wait, sorry, hold on. I want to make sure that people online can hear. So I want to repeat first what Walt said. Could you just say that again? I didn't hear what you said. Okay, so, and then I'm sorry for the folks online, but I'm trying to make it so you can hear. When we have to switch between laptops, we have to mute one and open the other. So the back and forth conversation just needs a little pause. Given all that, I think we're ready to go.
Yeah, Steve Bedetta here. So to answer that, yes, we do have, I just want to kind of make it clear that, I was just telling Mr. Lawson too, probably more than 2/3 of the airport, almost all of Washington Lake, all of Browns Pond, Silver Stream, that's all in the town of New Windsor. And I'm not here to say, not Newburgh or anything else, but everything is in the town of New Windsor, all this contamination. I have wells around the corner. I have Butter Hill wells. We test quarterly. Actually, I say we. I give the DEC a lot of credit for, they stepped up a lot for the town of New Windsor. So I owe them a lot. They test quarterly. They share the tests. We have, our limits. I noticed this last quarter was high. I don't know, for some reason, either winter months or this time of year, the numbers are high, the PFAS numbers are up. I don't know if it's from this. I don't, the whole weird thing, and I don't know how we get, I kind of joke about it, but their GAC system there is like the moonshiners version of the GAC system. I don't understand it. Like City of Newbury's got this beautiful thing. I got kind of a temporary thing that works, and then you got this airport thing that's 500,000. I just don't understand why we're not amping it up and making it an actual GAC system that can handle it. Because when it goes over the weir, I'm going to go back to, it's in Silver Stream, it's in the town of New Windsor, and it goes back to my wells again. So there is no, I get it, but when the rain's high or low, New Windsor is affected by it. Awful. I know there's the Silver Stream sluice gate has been closed underneath 207 to stop the water from going into Washington Lake. I called BS, and the reason I say that is because I was in that pipe a couple of weeks ago myself, and the water's getting through there. So Washington Lake is getting water from Silver Street. So we need to be more active in this. I get it. I know we're trying this, and there's funding and everything, but we need to step our game up. Honestly, I know it's easy for me to say, and I'm gonna sit here and walk over and sit down. I get it. I know you guys are trying, but again, this is why we were looking to be informed with more, and maybe we can feed everybody a little more information to make things happen. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thank you. We're going to move on. We are running about 10 minutes late, which is better than some weeks, but not. So, Mike.
Can I just ask one quick question about the previous presentation?
Can you hold?
Sure.
We have another presentation on the community involvement plan that I think people want to hear.
All right.
So if we could come back to that if we have questions. So I want to move on to the RAB business, which is Bill's going to give you where we are on the technical assistance for public participation grant. We're going to have a presentation on the community involvement plan, and then we'll just review upcoming meetings and those kinds of, those types of things, and get to any other remaining questions that we do have. So Bill.
Right, am I hot?
You're hot.
All right. So on the TAP application, we got the application. It was signed. I had a meeting scheduled with the contracting officer today, but for some reason he wasn't available. Also programmed the dollars, put the request into AFCAC. That's supposed to be approved. So I also submitted a draft performance work statement and a draft independent government cost estimate. What it's going to take to do what you guys wanted, the documents reviewed and that. I actually used the scope of work that was from Barnes, what they had used for their first TAP grant to put together this PWS. And it basically is having your subject matter experts review, I think it was like four reports or maybe 5. And one, the phase 1, the phase 2, the next UFP QAP addendum, and I believe the ECA, the Antiqua ECA was part of that. So working with the contracting folks, money's the critical path to this. Once I get approved the money, the contracting officer is going to be working with the university, to coordinate with their contracting folks so we can work how we could do this contract with them. And then those are the next steps. But we can't issue, a formal request for a proposal from the university until we actually have, money in hand to do that. But working everything else and putting all the documents together. So when the money comes through, we're ready to go. That's what I have for the TAP grant.
Okay, we're going to hold questions on the TAP grant to go along with questions on the community involvement plan. The community involvement plan update is being done by, go back one, by Emma from Dawson. I think you all met her at the poster board session. She's going to be presenting online, so you need to hold the microphone up for that. Okay.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me in the room? Say that one more time, please. Okay. I said, hi, everybody. This is Emma Kossab. Can you hear me online and in the room? Yep. Okay. I'm seeing some yeses and thumbs up, so I'll go ahead and get started as to not delay us. For those I haven't met yet, I'm Emma Kossab. I'm a project manager and public affairs specialist for Dawson. We are teaming up with Amy's team at Jacobs to support the Air National Guard in a community engagement support contract, which includes support for Stewart. So I'll be presenting on our update to the community involvement plan. Next slide, please. So just to give you an update and an overview, we will be updating the existing community involvement plan that was done in 2021 for Stewart. And to give you some background, a community involvement plan, or a CIP, is a site-specific strategy and a set of communication methods to support meaningful community involvement throughout the CERCLA process. So the Air National Guard is currently working on updating the CIP for Stewart, and we're seeking input from RAB members in the local community in order to do that. So below are some of the goals of the Stewart CIP, which include helping the community understand the Superfund process, identifying meaningful opportunities to participate, gauging community interests, knowledge, concerns, and preferred methods of communication, and applying those methods to helping the community members stay informed about the environmental restoration program at Stewart. Next slide, please. So, I want to talk to you about what we're currently doing. We are in the development phase of the draft community involvement plan. And so as a part of that, we are starting the community interview process by requesting RAB member and public input. We have a virtual questionnaire, which will be on SurveyMonkey, and I can actually put the links in the chat. I have a Spanish and English version of that. And or phone interviews can be conducted if requested to walk through the questionnaire. So the survey invites specific input to community concerns about Stewart regarding the environmental restoration program. To remind you, responses are confidential and anonymous, and we would highly encourage anyone you know, family, friends, coworkers, who you think may have some input or want to participate, please share. We have a QR code. I also have a Spanish and English version of a flyer that will be posted to the Air National Guard website and social media after this. And we also are encouraging RAB members to share with their local organizations as well. So I also have public points of contact for Mike as well as myself below if you have any questions after this. We can go to the next slide because it'll still have the link. So upcoming activities and what we will be doing. So I kind of briefly mentioned this before, but we'll be sharing those social media flyers that we are encouraging you to share via email and on social media, especially with local community partners. And the Air National Guard will be doing that as well. But I also wanted to introduce that the RAB will have the opportunity to review the draft final CIP, and a tentative timeline for that right now is May or June of this year. So, like I said, I will put those links in the chat shortly, but if you'd like to take the opportunity right now to scan that QR code, you're more than welcome to do that too. And that's all I have.
That you would get me a copy of the English and Spanish version of the flyer, and I can email that out to RAB members as well.
Yes. Yep. I will be doing that after this.
Great. Okay. Questions and comments on the community involvement plan and on the TAP grant. Jennifer?
Hi, I'm Jennifer. Spanish flyers, the QR code, the survey itself has no Spanish help. So I would hate to imagine Spanish speakers utilizing the flyer and being stuck in an English survey.
I'm sorry, Jennifer, I missed the first part of your question, but I think I heard the second part, so I can speak to that. There is a Spanish version of, oh, yep.
Emma, I'll repeat that. The QR code is to the English version. Is there a different QR code for the Spanish version?
For the survey.
Yes, there is. And there's a link and QR code, and I'll be supplying that. It's on the Spanish version of the flyer that I'll be sending to Amy to share with you all. Yes.
So this link is on the screen is only the English version of the
Yes,
questionnaire.
correct. Yep, it took a little bit longer to get it translated, but we have it now.
Okay, I see Dan Shapley.
All right. So first of all, I think this is really welcome. It's a good step to be able to revise this plan now. The first plan was put together basically during COVID, and to be honest, we all woke up and said, oh, there's a plan. Like, we weren't really that engaged, just because of the situation outside of this room. So I think this is a great opportunity to reset. The many of us who kind of meet outside of this forum have, documented, and we would like out, in addition to this survey, to have a chance to meet and, present that a written document that sort of outlines some of the repeated issues that we've tried to address over time or tried to raise over time, so that we can really try to tune up the operations, the communications, the promotions, some of the things that have kind of dogged us, and really see us get into a new mode where we're really working better. So I just want to that's a statement, I guess that's a request. And the other piece of it is just to clarify, if you could, again, what the May, June is. That's the time that we have till May, June to comment, or we're going to see a draft. What is the window of opportunity for us to influence right now the scope of this draft, I guess?
May, June timeframe. There's going to be a draft final CIP they're putting together, just like the draft final due diligence report that you guys saw. You're going to get a copy of that, and then you're going to be able to review it and provide comments. Oh, meeting with Emma?
Yeah, like a virtual.
Oh,
Yeah, Dan also asked if there could be a meeting with Emma, like a virtual meeting, to present, I think, some community involvement ideas that they wanted to have included.
yeah.
Bill says, yeah, sure.
If you want to email me, we can set something up.
Okay, we'll put that, that'll go through Ed Lawson. So he's the community co-chair. So we'll have Ed email you to set something up. Okay.
On either side or.
Sounds good.
Okay.
The way the units are designed, the way the building is designed, the soffit.
Okay.
Okay.
Sorry, somebody on the line was not muted. Next.
Thank you. Hey, it's Mike Shade. Two questions. One, can you just say again, what was the deadline for the survey? And then two, it says in the first bullet, development of draft CIP, including environmental justice assessment, but I didn't hear anything what that means. Can you talk about what does that mean, environmental justice assessment?
We're gonna let Emma answer. Okay.
Okay, I'm having a little bit of trouble. There's like a little bit of an echo, but I think I heard your questions. And so in terms of the survey, that's a great reminder. Thank you for pointing that out. It'll be open for a month. So I'll be sending out flyers, and then once it's open and you have the link, we'll have a month to collect responses. So do encourage people to share. The second part of the question, environmental justice assessment, I do think it's typical for a lot of the community development plans to reference an EJ screen report, which is part of EPA's toolkit. And it was included in the last virtual CIP. So that's kind of what that was about. I think that answered your question. But Bill, if you want to add to that, feel free.
What does it mean? What is it? You just said EJ screen, not.
Oh, Emma, they want to know what the environmental justice screening is. I mean, what is it that you're gonna do to do an EJ screening for the CIP?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, sure. So, so EPA has this tool, which is called an EJ screen tool. And essentially what it does is it's able to analyze sociodemographic information in relation to what they consider to be their top, I think it's 13 environmental indicators for that specific area. So it cross-references those and it develops a report based on the geographic area that you inputted. So for instance, it'll be the area surrounding Stewart Air National Guard Base. And that the report will help us as part of the CIP serve as an analysis to kind of what, I guess, the status of the community would look like in reference to that. Does that make sense? Am I making sense? Let me know if you have a follow-up question there.
Say it one more time.
Yeah. Sorry. Follow-up questions.
Okay, hold on. I'm gonna repeat for you. So are we good? Okay, Emma, the question, we're bouncing back and forth between laptops, so it's like mute one and unmute the other. The question was, when you say community, he wanted to know what the geographic boundaries are to define the community for the environmental justice assessment. Oh, okay. So this is pretty standard in what we use on the sister contract that we support too. So it's very identical to the other community involvement plans we're updating for other Air National Guard installations. But essentially we collect shape files from each installation that show the boundary of the installation itself. And then with that, we're able to make a 1 mile radius around the base, but it'll show more than that in the report. I forget what the actual extensions of the boundary are, but it'll pull that as the main reference point for the report. Correct. Emma, is that correct that you just said more than the 1 mile boundary would also be shown? Yes. Okay. Ed Lawson? Oh no, Dan has more. Hold on. Or Mike, I'm sorry.
Yeah. About, we know that the geographic impact has been bigger than 1 mile, right? People have drank contaminated water for decades. And it's not just whether you live within 1 mile of the base, it's whether you drank water that was contaminated, which is a much larger surface area. So I would strongly encourage, as you're developing this, to consider that, we've heard about how the town of New Windsor has been impacted. We know the city of Newburgh has been impacted. So it's much bigger radius than just 1 mile. And I think that limiting it to 1 mile would not really achieve what you're looking to do, is to look at whether or not low-income communities of color have been disproportionately impacted by decades of PFAS contamination here in Newburgh and here in New Windsor.
Okay. And Lawson?
I'm most encouraged, Emma, that you offered to speak and talk and engage us. This is Ed Lawson, co-chair. My day job is with the Family and Community Engagement Services. So I do a community engagement to earn a living. And one of the things that we understand is that any kind of the plan or design, there should be nothing about us without us. And if you don't include the people that you're designing the plan for, it really is not a plan to address a justice plan to address their specific beyond their needs, but their interests, concerns, hopes, and aspirations. There's also 3 categories of work that needs to be done when you're doing community engagement. The first is you're looking at disaggregated data. I think Mike talked about certain populations being impacted a certain way. Secondly, you want to look at current programs, practices, policies, and procedures to be able to understand. I didn't solve the problem yet. I'm understanding the community that I'm engaging. And the final thing is, beyond surveys, we want to do targeted stakeholder engagement. We want to actually speak to people and have conversations around what their interests and concerns and hopes and aspirations are. So again, I'm most encouraged by the fact that you said we can reach out and we can talk and we can engage in these conversations, because it's going to be more than just the surveys. I think last time it was just surveys, and I don't think we hit the mark the way we wanted to, because you want to get at how best people receive information and want to engage in this conversation, and you want to get at what there is most concerning to them. One of the challenges that we have in this community is apathy. People don't feel that they're being spoken to or listened to. So to send a survey out, just a survey, and to do some sort of environmental scan without actually engaging people, I think would be another. I want to get engaged more. So I'm encouraged again, because, and we'll be reaching out. We'll be reaching out to Heather. We'll be reaching out to you. And I appreciate the opportunity that you're giving us to do that.
Okay, thanks, Ed. Chuck Thomas.
Thank you. Chuck Thomas speaking. The city of Newburgh is already a defined environmental justice community. It has that designation currently. So you can skip do the research anyway, but it's already been defined as an environmental justice community. So thank you.
Thanks, Chuck. Jack Caldwell.
Yes, Jack Caldwell. I would like to add just one more thing to this geographic boundary thing, and that has to do with the school district here. It's a little bit unique in that it's an enlarged school district. The children from New Windsor come into the city of Newburgh. The children from the town of Newburgh come into the city of Newburgh, all for their high school years and their middle school years or junior high years. That kind of means the geographic boundaries expands all around into 3 fully large city school districts. So keep that in mind, please.
Thanks, Jeff. Jennifer Rollison.
I am Jennifer. Is the survey that we're looking on from this QR code the final version, or do we have opportunity to maybe give some feedback? Right, but I don't know if it's a.
Emma, can you respond to that question? Did you hear that?
Yes, I did. It is the final version of the questionnaire, but not the draft CIP is being developed currently. So that's not, you will have opportunity to provide input there.
Okay. Thank you.
Sound issues. So thank you very much. And I apologize, and we'll be working hard to make sure that those don't happen again. Our upcoming meetings, the dates are here. Our meetings are always scheduled to meet on the 4th Wednesday of the month, except for January, which we pushed back a week. I wanted to point out, don't automatically think that's the last Wednesday of the month, because a lot of our months have 5 Wednesdays this year. So please pay attention that these are the dates of the upcoming 3 RAB meetings. As always, please send RAB-related messages to both Stewart Public Affairs and to me. And that messages, we ask that please, one of the big roles of your community co-chair is for your communications to come through Ed. And we appreciate that. And Oh, or newly elected co-chair. Sorry, that was from last time, Ed. You were elected. So I'll delete that. Ed is your co-chair this year. So please send messages through Ed. Next slide. And is there any other RAB business? And I did skip the last public question time frame. There were no public questions typed into chat online. And I want to make sure, because I did skip over that as we moved into the community involvement plan discussion. Do any of the public attendees in the room have any questions on what you have heard or statements that you want to make? This would be your time to come forward and make those if you'd like to. They're all looking at me like they want to stay seated, so we're going to go ahead. And final slide, I think, is, well, okay, just as always, if you think of some more questions after the meeting, there's a time period at which to submit those questions on the presentations that you have seen. Dan collects those questions, and you have until the Friday, the week after, 2 weeks after, I guess, the meeting. So February 14th is the date for those. And then, and this is a little bit of a new process again that we worked out and we discussed in the fall. And we've always said, oh, please submit any questions or topics you want to see on the next agenda. In working through things with Mr. Lawson in the fall, and both the base co-chairs working together to try to make these presentations fit better to what your questions are that you know ahead of time. Of course, you're always welcome to ask questions, but to the extent that you know things ahead of time, we ask you to submit those proposed topics and questions to Mr. Lawson, and the deadline for that will be March 5th. We'll be having our agenda planning meeting with him probably that week or right after the following week. So I know you did submit some questions this time, but they came in last week, so there wasn't I think we addressed a lot of them in discussions, but there wasn't a chance to incorporate them into the presentation. Next slide. And that's closing. Thank you for attending. Our next meeting is April 23rd here, and this is an opportunity for Colonel McGuire or Mr. Lawson to make any final closing statements.
We're going to get on the chest to questions.
I'm sorry. You did? Okay. I apologize. I didn't, when I said RAB members, I didn't see that you had a question. Go ahead, Chuck Thomas.
Snap too. Just one of the things came up. Bill, do we have any kind of for the approval or consideration of the also, do we have to vote or do any other steps to make it an application so we don't
Start inside.
yeah. Okay. So there's nothing else we have to do there. The other one that is controversial is the stormwater treatment overflows. I refer back to the letter from the Assistant Secretary of Defense in July of 2023, where he very clearly states, and I'm not going to try to do this, that the department is committed to addressing its PFAS releases as quickly as possible. They want to mitigate further PFAS plume migration or ongoing impacts to groundwater, surface water, and/or sediment from an on-base PFAS source area. Further, they're directed to prioritize implementation of interim action as expeditiously as possible. That seems to me that would fall right under the overflows at a rec pond. So I don't know if you could address.
You can put
Bill?
my hot.
You're
There.
hot.
All right. So yeah, they're part of it, and you know it may not be as expeditious as you want it to be, and I'm working with folks to try to get it through. So noted, which is not a good answer, but we understand that's in there, and we're working towards that.
That's the interaction on stormwater that you're.
Yeah, the interim stormwater treatment stuff. I mean, we're doing that, and we're trying to do a combination of different things to make it work. So
Appreciate your attempt to answer.
Okay, and if people will just bear with us just one more minute, Mike Shea did have actually one more question that he wanted to ask. I think it's a question to Walter. Mike, why don't you come up so people online can hear your question? Thanks for hanging in, folks. I know we're at 7:40. Hopefully this doesn't open up an hour of discussion.
Yeah, I'll do my best. Just another question. This is from an earlier presentation. Walter, your slides and earlier presentation as well. It says here for the next field mobilization, number 3, it says there may be private water well sampling if required. And I wonder if you guys could speak to what does that mean? Like what is the scope and what role does the health department play in this discussion around private water well sampling? And, we all know that since wells were sampled in years past, we've learned more about the dangers of PFAS. There's more evidence that they're dangerous at low levels of exposure. So I'm curious, how does all that fit as well within, the decision-making for conducting more private water well sampling?
Yeah, I can answer that. So part of AECOM's scope of work, we had a component for doing drinking water sampling, residential drinking water if we needed it. And so right now, I don't know if there's anyone from the health department here tonight. Local health department? Oh, is there any, I know there was a lot of sampling that was done, but I don't believe anything was exceeded any standards in that.
So he's addressing Steve Gagnon, who's from the local health department.
Sure.
Steve, go ahead.
Yeah, it was the state health department that did the sampling, so I don't have those records handy, but all those individual homeowners were reached out to at that time. So I'm not aware of any additional sampling that they're going to be doing.
Go ahead.
We good?
Yep.
So with that, and when we've got, I can't remember her name from the health department that works with DEC, they've been reviewing all the documents in that. And to my knowledge, no one's come forward to us saying, hey, we've got residential wells that are above, X standard. Right. So, but it's in their scope of work. If we need to do that we can do that. Normally, and their DC and the regulators are pretty good about letting me know if I'm above the standards for something. So.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks. And with that, I am going to turn it over to Colonel McGuire and Mr. Lawson for any final words. Just step up to the laptop.
Real quick. I'm sitting in my chair, and Ramona, welcome to the board. I'm sorry, I forgot to welcome you. But Chuck and Jennifer and Superintendent, I can feel your passion and your frustration. It's palpable sitting over here. And just 2 things. I wrote down a bunch of stuff. 2 things. Ed, you mentioned apathy in the community, us doing a little bit better job at listening and explaining and communicating. I noted that. We will do that. Chuck, I think you started off by mentioning when we were talking about DOT, just this is a board of a lot of smart people, maybe in using the steering capacity a little bit and bringing the board in earlier in the process in some of these products. So I noted that. I can't make guarantees. Government is big and huge and likes to keep things close hold. But I did note it, and we will work to do that. Thank you.
Heather, Emma, and others for allowing us the opportunity to reach out directly and to have the dialogue. I also want to talk about our desire to get the community more involved. This Sunday, February 2nd, from 2:30 to 4:30 p.m., we'll have an event that's sponsored by the Newburgh Clean Water. We will be supportive of it. It's called Spilling the Tea. And there's going to be a real talk about Newburgh's water and health and what folks can do about it. And again, to the conversation we were having with both Heather and Emma, this is the kind of thing that has to happen for people to begin to understand what's going on in language that they understand, in an environment that they feel safe and trusting in. And we're going to begin to have conversations. Some of the guests that are going to be there are, some of the guests that are going to be there at the University of Albany, the Natural Resource Defense Council, and the Environmental Advocates of New York. And we want to just have some light refreshments and understand the results of the PFAS health study, the lead pipe replacement and policy that's going on in Newburgh, and the PFAS New York State protections and more. But again, I'd like to continue this theme of us being able to outreach to the community. I'm thanking everyone again for their time. I know we went over, and I appreciate everyone's effort. Have a great rest of your night, and we'll see you soon. But hopefully we can talk before the next meeting in April.